investors and taxpayers in the United States are mulling over Donald Trump's latest legislation. The US president signed his massive spending and tax bill into law as part of Independence Day celebrations at the White House. The law has major implications for nearly every American. For more on the consequences of this spending bill, let's talk to Joseph Williams, who's the former senior editor at US News and World Report. Joseph, good to see you. Now, let's talk about one of the most contentious parts of this bill, Medicaid. 16 million people could lose their health insurance by 2034. How many of those will feel the effects before November 2026, the midterm elections?
Well, almost certainly a good portion of them, I would estimate somewhere around 20 to 30% will start to feel it because it phases in over time. And once again, the cuts are set to start after the 2026 midterm election, so you've got a bit of a time bomb there. But what's really fascinating about all of this is the fact that Republicans are leaning heavily on justifying it through offering work requirements. That is, anyone who's unemployed, who's getting health insurance for free, has to at least show that they're volunteering, that they're in school, or that they have a full-time job. Now, a lot of problems with that, not the least of which is the fact that it creates an administrative burden where it's not about having to have a job or to have a volunteered, but the fact that getting through that paperwork and creating a maze of red tape and limiting the amount of time that you'll be able to find all of these things to do with your time is really kind of onerous and is going to cause people to drop off by default. Not to mention the fact that many people are already receiving Medicaid are working individuals and will have to go through this red tape and cross this hurdle and will drop off there too.
Right, so you're saying it's going to make it more complicated and ambiguous for those low-income workers?
Absolutely, and that's going to cause them it's a bit like the notion of self-deportation.
Right.
This is going to cause people to drop off simply because they either can't perform the paperwork or they don't have time to perform the paperwork, or the paperwork is so confusing that they can't understand it without an expert.
Right. Now, the law also paves the way for numerous tax changes, with the most significant being to the cuts Trump enacted during his first term in 2017. Will these tax provisions impact working class voters too?
They will, because it downshifts the tax burden from the upper echelon to the lower echelon, meaning that there are going to be some sunsetted provisions for tax deductions. The earned income tax credit is going to have a hit. The child tax credit, which was so popular during the pandemic, that's dead and gone for years and years. And that was something that would help real people pay for real costs that would help them progress up the class ladder and at least keep them one rung away from total economic ruin. Many people in the United States don't have enough to cover a major disaster, let alone a minor one, and these kind of tax changes are going to put more downward pressure on lower income people.
Now, green energy is another factor that's going to see major rollbacks, everything from solar panels to the EV industry. Can you talk a little bit about what this means for the future of green energy in the US and also the businesses associated with it, like electric cars?
Well, there are a whole raft of provisions that kind of seem backward looking and don't really address what we're facing right now. We recently had a disaster in Texas that was made worse by climate change, and yet the tax provisions in this bill are rewarding energy, carbon-based energy. It's rewarding drilling. It's cutting back on solar. It's cutting back on wind, which is going to hurt those industries, which China is already outpacing us at. And it's a little bit interesting that we've decided not to compete head-to-head with China on green energy, but instead are trying to retrofit our way back to a policy that we know is harming the environment and could you could draw a through line to some of those climate policies that we had in the past, to the dumping of rain in Texas that cost so many lives. So it's going to reverse the United States leadership on climate. It's going to reverse their leadership on green energy. It's going to cause a couple of green energy sectors here in the United States, like solar, like wind, to really kind of have to rethink whether they're not going to be able to invest all in, or if they're going to lose money for the sake of helping save the climate.
And some aspects of this bill will be delayed. What's behind this implementation strategy, do you think?
Well, in a word, politics. Essentially, they want to delay the worst of this and want to create kind of a shockwave or time bomb, if you will, to get past the midterm elections so the voters don't really necessarily feel the worst of these effects right away and blame Republicans for it and punish them at the ballot box. But it's hard to imagine how that's not going to happen, because the Democrats are almost certainly going to make this the centerpiece of their midterm election campaign. Hakeem Jeffries' speech, that was all but a declaration of war coming up into the 2010 midterms. But one hidden aspect that not a lot of people are talking about is the billions and billions that are going to be sent towards immigration and customs enforcement and homeland security. You're going to see more scenes like you did in MacArthur Park today. It's going to become more commonplace. Perhaps that's the point, but certainly it's going to be a larger, stronger, more muscular Homeland Security Department that's going to do more of these raids just in order to keep up with the money that's being thrown at them by the Trump administration. Unfortunately,
Joseph, we'll have to leave it there. Wish we could keep talking. It's really been great to hear your thoughts. Joseph Williams here for us. Thank you.
Thank you.